Hello everyone and welcome to episode 13 of ComposerCast. And on this episode we get to talk to Jan Valta and Adam Sporka, who are the composers for Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is an amazing RPG medieval game set in 1403, I think, Bohemia. So if you haven't played that, go and check it out, it's brilliant. And they talk about how they created the music and they give some tips for composers just starting out in the industry. And yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, thanks very much for doing this, you guys.
Thanks for reaching out.
So this is a question to both of you. I was wondering, what is your experience with music growing up?
Adam, will you start?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I did some piano lessons when I was 6. It was my parents wanted me to be a musician, which was great, and I'm totally grateful for that.
You are.
Actually, yes, you're right. And then I got my Atari 800 XL, which is a computer which is capable of some musical output. And then I was fascinated by those toy Yamaha keyboards, that you just press a button and just does all sorts of music, these kinds of things, which is essentially adaptive music, right? In a way, right?
Yeah.
And so I was fascinated by it. Actually, we both were fascinated by these kinds of things, right, Hansa?
Yeah.
Right,
yes,
right.
That's true.
Yeah. And then I got my other machines which were capable of making music. My 386, and I did some module music for one super old video game called Oiled Empire. That was my first thing. It was like I was still back at the on a high school, and then I just did some research with involving audio and these kinds of things. I'm an academic in terms of my background, right? So I'm like a researcher of sound and these kinds of things. And then I joined Warhorse, and before then I joined this project which was crossover between let's say one cartoon and one video game, and we are making an RPG based on that. And that was like a couple years before I joined Warhorse, and it helped me to realize that actually I know probably enough in order to be able to pull off a project like Kingdom Come.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay. I should just, before I start about my musical background and start, I should just add to Adam that probably he was a bit modest. For instance, he didn't mention that he's actually a very good flute player. He studied flute, and he even was thinking about whether to study on conservatory the piano or flute, and finally he went to gymnasium, and then he decided to become a scientist. But he is coming back to our musical arms again after years. So now it's in his entirety. As for me and my background, my choice of occupation, or how to say, was actually rather easy, because all my family is strictly professional musicians. My father is a conductor and a wonderful pianist. My mom is a pianist, and she's a director of an elementary music school. Even my sister, she plays harpsichord, and she lives now in France, and she is a huge specialist in early music. So I grew up in totally,
music
classical
everywhere.
music. Yeah, just music everywhere. When I was 6 or maybe 5, I started to do two things. First, attending the concerts my father was conducting. Now imagine how it is like, to sit in the audience, and then, everybody stops chatting and whatever. The orchestra enters, the applauding starts, and then the orchestra chills out as well. And your father enters the room, and the orchestra stands up, and everybody starts clapping and whatever. So, yeah, actually, I was like, well, I don't want, it's not bad. I was like, I don't know what I will do one day in the musical branch, but I'll definitely do something like this, because that's it, So that's how it started. At the same age, I started attending these concerts regularly every week. I also started playing violin, which I was doing, I'm still violinist, I'm still an active instrumental player. I studied the conservatory in Teplice and the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague. Getting the master degree, I think. But we musicians, we don't think too much of these academic credits. Yeah. It's not that much important. The more important thing is whether you know how to play or not.
Exactly.
And I spent about 2 seasons in Czech Philharmonic Orchestra, and I left to come to the academy. Then I started to play in a string quartet called Herald Quartet, and we are now celebrating our 20th season being together. Thank you very much. It's like a marriage. There are 4 people involved, so it's very interesting. The guys are already kind of family. So this is it. And whilst playing in the string quartet, we needed some arrangements here and there for some occasional gigs. Some of them were rather obscure, the others were nice, but whatever. And I started to write such music, it was mainly transcriptions, arrangements, and whatever. Then I started to compose slowly, on and on. And then somehow through many other things they happened, I happened to be composer at Warhorse Studios doing for this fantastic game called Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yeah.
And actually, I need to add one thing about yourself, that you actually wrote you actually wrote a video game before I wrote any. Hansa.
I did.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Because Adam was talking about Atari 800 XL. That was actually the machine I started on too. Well, the game was rather silly. Definitely the gameplay wasn't that interesting as the game we were doing in Warhorse Studios. But of course, the expenses I had were much smaller. I was about 14 or 15.
Yeah, but still, it was like a thing that you actually could just walk through and all these kinds of things, right? So it was something.
That's I would say the very cool thing about the two of us is that I being not a coder, being a musician as my main occupation since I don't know, I tried to do a video game. Actually, in my video game by then on this 8-bit computer there was no music because I was like, okay, I'll add the music later. I need to do the gameplay first. I was quite clever. Yeah, so that's me. And Adam, being the musician too, but also the man who actually created the sequence music engine which runs and tames and controls the music in the game or whatever. Yeah. He actually composed the music for a video game earlier than me. So how crazy is that?
Wow.
Yes.
That is very cool. Well, do you guys find that, so you both play instruments, do you find that helps with writing the music? Because obviously if you're composing, you've got to compose for lots of different instruments.
I may take this one as a first, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely, yes. I don't say that somebody who doesn't play an instrument cannot become a great composer. There might be some, But if you see, even in the history, the people, they really were great composers, no matter whether in classical era or in pop or in film music or whatever. All of them were playing some instruments, and many of them were actually almost virtuosos or virtuosos themselves. Yeah. I would say, for me personally, of course, as a string player, I play violin. Of course, I tried viola occasionally, not too much. But anyway, do too many jokes. They are saying about violas, but anyway. So the good thing is, if you have a score with the symphony orchestra, you have how many? I don't know. You have many lines in woodwinds. You have brass. You have percussion and timpani and something in between there. You have choir. But then there are those 5 lines. Those 2 sections of violins, viola, the cello, and double basses at the bottom. And it's just 5 lines, but actually, if you stay on stage with the orchestra, it's like 2/3 of the musicians, or at least the half of them. So it's like, I have to say that as for the articulation, markings, techniques, how to play what, and thinking about sound and playability and difficulty and whatever else, and timbre, I might say that strings are probably the most challenging and complicated amongst the others. I mean, woodwinds, they do have their own specifics, particularly because
each... Have to breathe. That's the thing to remember about them.
They don't. Oh, yes, okay, they do occasionally.
Yes.
All right, but the thing is, the strings don't breathe in a way, but there are other things. I have to say that being a professional violinist, yeah, it helps a lot because I simply don't need to think about that lower part of the score. You know, I'm simply writing it the way I think. I mean, very fast, and I don't need to think about it too much.
Yeah,
So that helps a lot. That helps a lot.
You know what they're going to be able to play. Whereas if I'm writing something, I think, can they play?
This is actually a very good thing to mention, that when you are a professional musician, and you can experience so many things from, say, the other side. I mean, when I'm now in a studio making music directions, sitting in the booth or conducting or whatever else, or just composing and thinking about how the music is going to be performed, I always remember how it is when I was on the other side. I mean, sitting in a studio, being one of the violinists, in the bunch of people, and tired and sometimes annoyed and sometimes I don't know what, and with my arms aching and whatever, and so I think this is really very, very important. And actually, this is something I call social composing. It actually doesn't have any meaning, this saying, but I mean, it helps to me because I don't see individual lines of the score, individual states. I really think of it like how it would be when the individual musician would see it. How would he or she feel, And there are things like, if there comes a huge solo in the first French horn, you give it, I don't know, 2 bars before a break, so he can just ease his lips, and prepare a bit, and just to shake hand like, oh geez, let's go. And he starts then. And you need to think about those things, and the more you think about it, the more playable things you create. And the more playable things you create, the better the musicians are able to play it. So it actually helps your music when you do that. And I find this very important, and this is what I find the most important advantage of being an instrumental player by myself.
Yeah, I guess with like sample libraries and stuff now, people they can play and they can create anything, and they maybe might skip that bit of thinking about how the musicians are going to cope with it.
Yes, actually, it's also important to see the technical aspects, right? Because lots of music doesn't sound, let's say, nice. Even music from the samples can sound nice if you do things which the respective live instruments would be doing themselves, right? So that's kind of a nice thing. And as far as I'm also interested in electronic music too. And so for me, I'm trying to reenact and do music in different genres of electronic music. And for that, it's also very important to understand like how individual synthesizers worked and how the sound synthesis works. And it's very linked to what Hansa was saying, right? That there are certain aspects of musical of how the sound is generated, so that you know exactly what kind of sounds you can get out of each synthesis technique, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, are you finished, Adam?
Yes.
You are really not saying something about you being because he really is maybe too modest. He also plays guitar,
That thing.
I'm saying you one by one,
Okay, I have
actually, but he doesn't want to say it, so I need to push it a bit.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Actually, I have two experiments in my life, lifelong experiments. One is whether I'm able to learn Italian without a teacher, and the other thing is whether I'm able to learn how to play guitar without a teacher.
Yeah, I think you definitely can.
Yeah, guitar is a really nice instrument. It's like I like the puzzles, right? That you need to you need to know all those intervals between the strings, and find it really enjoyable. Just to play melodies and like these kinds of things, because you always need to count the intervals, and it just gives you a beautiful insight into how intervals work and all these kinds of things. That's great.
And then you get up to the G and the B string, and it all changes a little bit, and you've got to think of all the different shapes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And yeah.
Awesome.
Just if I may, because there is something I want to say about this. As you asked, that people don't think that much about the playability because they have samples and they can do whatever they want. Well, I think it's working also the other way around. I mean, the music we hear nowadays, as say mainstream in film and gaming industry, the composers often use only those types of timbres and techniques and ways how to make their virtual instruments play. Only those of them they sound really very well, and also they don't cost too much work. I mean. If you have a good virtual library, you can come actually quite close to a live performance. I would say, as far as I'm concerned now about the up-to-date Pinnacle things, you can't make it 100%. There is always a live performance which is better. And it's not only about each individual musician will give something from his own heart, his own mind, or whatever. It's even without that, which is impossible because this is actually music. This is the important thing, that people give something from themselves, the individual thing, and in the orchestra it melts together into one homogeneous something. But even without that, there are some techniques and special things and connections in between tones, and timbres and whatever. So no, you can't. I think you can't still do the same with samples as with live orchestra. But I mean, this is where we found borders for doing music for Kingdom Come as well. Because our first one of the rules we have made for ourselves to make it harder for us and better for the game. One of many such, was like, we will not let the technology dictate us what kind of music we are able to write and which we shouldn't write. I mean, like, okay, this sounds horrible in samples. Let's find a way how it would sound wonderful in samples, And in many ways, we really achieved that, but it was, of course, very painful. It took a lot of time and effort, and I have to say that then, in the end, of course, you do compromising because there are things you can't do with the sample libraries. But one example is like, if you have a strong, broad melody in strings, which is something I like, and everybody likes it actually. And of course, you can't use it. You can't use it everywhere, but you may use it in many occasions. If you do this in samples, it will always be a bit complicated. So what happened actually was that I had to choose in between two possibilities. First one was like, okay, this would be musically okay, but everybody hears its samples because they are not capable of doing it this way, the phrasing, or I don't know what, the build-up, or the connection between notes or whatever, the top of the phrase. And the second option was like, okay, this way it sounds as if it were live recorded. On the other hand, it's musically not that much nice. It's not that much interesting. So it's like not too good orchestra would perform it, or somebody who is not too inspirational would ask them to do that or something. So those were the things we had to compromise. Then we had to find, like, either do it that way or this way, and there were two ways, and none of them was perfect. But
actually, and at some point you would just take out your violin and just play the part yourself, right? Like People of the Land, for example,
but
right?
That's the truth. That's actually the first piece we have made for Kingdom Come Deliverance. That was in help me, July, August 2014, Adam.
Something like that. Yeah. Actually, one of the first things, yes. And then we went to record it to the studio, and it was. Yeah,
that's actually the thing. I mean, like, well, there were many versions, of course, because we were still trying to find the common ground with Daniel Valta, because he had a very clear vision of how the music should be, and he even said that. But even that, he was very clear about saying it, and it was quite a lot of important information. You still need to find your own way for the project. So we were doing this first. I was composing version one after one. Finally, we agreed on one, which is the music which, if you start the game, it plays as the first one. It's called People of the Land, and there is a violin solo at the beginning and then at the end, and then there is a short flute solo.
So, yes.
Yes. So and we yeah, that's Adam, because we we were at the beginning and we didn't want to spend too much money or time on the production because we were not sure whether we will do the job. It was like test, like to do what you can and show us, and so we were not completely sure. So I was playing violin and I was playing flute. So we used both of the instruments. Both the solos are live recorded, which adds something to it. The good thing is that once you do this, once you use a bit of live instruments, people hear it and they tend to believe that the rest is live as well, but it isn't. So you're lying to them, but whatever, you have to do it that way.
One question about the sample libraries: are there any sample libraries like you use that you really like? I think people might be interested in that.
We use cinesamples for a lot of things that we use, and also that's the basic sound of our orchestra are basically cinesamples, right? Those parts which are made from samples. We have how many? We have something like 100 minutes of live music in the game, and the rest is made using samples. We have.
This is what I wanted to say, Adam. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Oh yes.
Okay, so I didn't say, but you did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So we have 80 minutes of the music recorded by the orchestra, and then we have some more stuff recorded by medieval band. Those pop songs.
Yes.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
That's Adam's job, actually.
Yeah, that was my part. And
also the men's choir singing the Gregorian chant in the monastery. That's also Adam's job. It's a Gregorian chant, but composed in 21st century, so it's not that much Gregorian, but whatever.
It's not really Gregorian, and actually, and I actually got some heat for it. Yeah, I was super happy that I was able to work on this kind of a thing, right? So I just wanted to share how happy I am with someone, and I was like, I just had this beautiful opportunity to recreate a Gregorian chant for this thing, and we just went and we recorded this thing, and it was just beautiful, and I totally enjoyed it. And the response was like, well. And have you studied it? Have you do you have some sort of formal training in this thing? Like how? And basically, the question was like, how dare you? But it's okay. Actually, the Gregorian chant has a nice thing to it because I think it's interesting from several. Reasons. One is personal, like deeply personal, because it was recorded in a church in Čáslav, in the town of Čáslav, which is like 50 miles east of Prague, where lots of our family history has happened. Right, lots of weddings, lots of.
Unfortunately, even funerals. Yeah.
Funerals.
I should add one thing which people don't know as to the moment. We are cousins. Me and Adam.
Yes, we are cousins.
Interesting. Yeah, we are good family. That's it.
So that thing is like super significant for us that we were able to, let's say, have this structure, this building like represented in the game itself, right? That's like super. That's like one. That was a very very. Nice thing. And the other thing, which is I think nice, is that the chant is actually written in a nonlinear way as the rest of our music, but in this way, you have like different strophes, and so we recorded it's strophe by strophe, and there are several versions of each. And they are chosen at random. So there is a sequence of these, but you never know which one is like chosen the next. And sometimes there are entire parts skipped. So so you never exactly. So when you hear the song in the game, you never know exactly how it ends up, right? Because every single time it plays in a little bit different.
Yeah.
And actually, what I liked on this concept when Adam came up with it, I was like, but wait, why to do this random? And then we were like, well, it's actually good because Henry is entering the monastery and he is not a monk. He's pretending to want to become one.
Yeah.
And then he actually becomes one. And then he needs to spend some time there. But actually, he doesn't understand the way the monks are living, so he can't even understand the way they are singing. He simply doesn't have to understand the chant, It must be something he hears all the time, It has to be slightly monotonous, but actually also something he can't find any system in it or something. So it was actually something, and I think it works, in the game.
Yeah,
so far, I know people like it, so it was a good trick to do. Yeah.
That leads me on to the next question about like developing the custom audio engine. Like, it's all developed by you.
Yes, actually, okay, so I should clarify the extent of this effort.
Okay.
So we're using Fmod Studio as our audio middleware, but basically, the interface between the game and the listener.
Yep.
And so that's one thing. But then we use the part of the game which serves the audio stream for the music, that is ours. That is entirely in-house. It was a project that we started working on with Hansa before we joined Warhorse, and Warhorse was our is definitely the most important use case of this technology. So it is an adaptive music engine, which means that it represents the soundtrack in a way that it could be played back in a way that is required by the game at any given moment, basically. So it's like a sort of like an intelligent playlist, and all the songs that we have, all the tracks that we have, are made in the way that we can make transitions from one to another in a way that it makes like a musical sense. And that thing, I'm not saying that we're the first ones. We're not the first ones to do this, but there are not all that many implementations worldwide of this thing, and we have our own solution, which I coded in C++, and that's
What I was going to ask, what made you use that instead of like just using Fmod or just using Wise? What did?
I think two things. First thing is that we wanted some specific functionality that we have designed with Hansa. Those the ways how one piece transitions into another, and we really wanted to be in a complete control of this process, right? Yeah. So when you code something on your own, you know exactly what is happening, and you can alter it on. You can just test it. You can fine tune it. You can tweak it to your heart's content. Yeah. So that was first reason, and the second reason is that I am a programmer, and programmers like to program things, and so.
I spotted that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They do.
So basically, it's like a combination of this. At least for me, it's been a combination of my joy for music as well as my joy for programming and like engineering and signal processing, and it just all combined in a single project.
Yeah.
And I may add. I will not talk about the technology we're using because that's mostly Adam's responsibility and asset. But the good thing for me was that, of course, it's music. But it's interesting, and in music for audio visuals, you of course have to come up with. I was talking about it already a bit. You need to come up with some kind of a significant face for the music as itself, as a whole for the project, how the project would sound in a musical way. So that's the first thing you need to do. Then you need to come up with some themes or motifs or some tunes or whatever. So actually, that's called composing. That's fine. But but very rarely you can do something which is called inventing. You don't invent too many things nowadays if you are a composer. Yeah. I mean, composers back then in the old times, they might come up with like a new technique, coming to French horn player and saying like, okay, what if we add valves, instead of this boucher all the time or something, Yeah. And or somebody could come up with I don't know, in the Mannheim school in the classical era, they come up with crescendo and diminuendo, like it's like a good thing, They were just, and everybody was stunned by like, oh, this is a wonderful idea, not just to play either loud or soft, but to make something in between, like a build-up. That's great, wow, And these things are, I don't know, some formal inventions like the sonata form or rondo or whatever. Nowadays, I think it's very hard to come up with something new because I feel like everything was here, and things they try to do, the things people try to do as new are usually very ugly. So what to do if you want to experience this inventor's a passion, Yeah, you should write music for video games because there you really can still invent things. You still can come up with a new solution nobody tried before because it's so extremely difficult that nobody would dare. And this is what we did with our seamless transitions,
Yeah, and you were saying that basically making a video game music gives you the chance to explore the themes that you come up with in such a broad range of different contexts and emotional, let's say, uses and like emotional positions and orchestrations and cast and situations and combinations and you probably should say what you say about opera in comparison to
yeah. Okay, well, it's common, but whatever. First, what I'm saying is the truth. I mean, if you are composing a film or even TV show or something, you do have some main theme and you have some love themes, some secondary themes or whatever, and you use them for different purposes. But you will probably never use the themes in so many possible ways and feelings and emotions and moods. But if you are making a video game as Kingdom Come Deliverance is, I mean, you have the same theme used in a horror way, in a love story way, in a drama way, in a epic battle way, and whatever else, So, I mean, you really know the themes very well because you see them from all the angle, all the aspects, and you reshape them so many times throughout the creational process that they actually become sort of members of your family then. So that's the great thing. Besides the invention, I was saying this is also great stuff that you can try all possible genres in just one single project. This is something that will never happen to you if you would do anything else save for video game music, I would say. And what Adam was mentioning about the opera, there used to be, to me, kind of like the most difficult thing any composer could do. And I was always like, it's definitely the opera, because, if you have, say, a long opera lasting for 2-3 hours or whatever, and you need to follow the story, you need to depict the persons in a dramaturgical way with your music. You need to think about the singing, about the special technical things for singers, but you also need to think about the stage, about the performance, how it would look like, how the individual parts of it would, come up together and whatever. So I was like, the most difficult thing is opera. Okay, after I finished Kingdom Come Deliverance together with Adam, I can say it's not. There is at least one thing which is more difficult than composing an opera, though I never composed one. But I mean, like, at least in opera, it starts with bar 1 and it ends with bar 4,477, and it simply never is being performed the other way. That's the way it's composed and that's the way it plays, which is something you don't have at all when you're composing a music for a video game, because you never know what will come up as the next, and you have to be prepared for every single possibility. So yeah.
It leads me on to one of my next questions, actually, which was, so if you are moving from if the tempo is slower in one piece of music, say if you're out in the wilderness, you're hunting boar or something in the game, and then suddenly a battle happens, does the tempo change? And if it does, how do you switch smoothly between that?
Abruptly, actually.
Adam, maybe I will just say shortly something, and then
Sure.
we will talk about the abrupt changes we have.
Yep.
This happens all the time. It depends not about the tempo change, because we have exploration music, which is say for countryside, for fields or whatever, for river, which is rather like peaceful, slow, and whatever. And then you come into the village or a town, and we play music which is actually fast and moving, and there it is seamless transition, and it's okay because that's the way we do it. That's the way we can prepare the change of the tempo with many things,
right?
And we do it. So this is fine, and we have time to do that. But that's in case you are coming from one exploration music to another one. From field into the town. But if you are asking about, say, from a field to a combat or to a battle, Adam will tell you now.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, that's the thing that when you make transitions from piece to piece, it's always good to do it at some point which makes musical sense, right? So. Yeah. You might want to, let's say, finish your phrase before moving on, right? But sometimes you cannot do that because you just don't have enough time there. But it was our observation that, well, it's not much of an observation. It's kind of a common sense that when you have a movies, and that this is something which we probably should have said at some point that one of our design rules was that whatever can sound in the movies can sound in our game. So basically, whatever is permissible for a movie, film
for a good movie.
Yes, for a good movie is permissible for our game. And one thing which happens quite often in the film music is that you have abrupt changes at the end of the bar. So you play a music, and at the end of the bar something happens, and the new music starts, right? And you don't really care. Yes, and so you can just change the tempo from between two bars without any problem whatsoever.
Yep.
You just have to delimit it somehow, and the delimitation is already there because the structure, well, the feeling of the battle music, of the action music, is entirely different from the feeling of the exploration music, right? Of course, because those are two different positions. So when you abruptly change an exploration music into a combat music, it works, and it sounds logical. Okay. And we actually have several technical tweaks there. First tweak is that we have every single bar is annotated, so we know exactly, like down to the sample precision. We know where the first beat of every single bar happens, right?
Yeah.
So that's
quite a lot of annotations, actually.
Yeah, that was.
We have quite many hours in music.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
We used some sort of an automatic way because we would really. I don't know. Actually, we never counted the total number of bars. We should do it. Just for the heck of it.
I think you can do it quite easily because you have the automation.
Yes, that's right. Oh yes, absolutely, yes.
That's one of the things Adam was inventing, and he invented this automatization, and it helped a lot. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That totally helped. But that's a long story. And then so that's one thing. The other thing is that we know. Okay, so basically, the game says, okay, I need a combat music, right? And the music engine, the sequence music engine knows, okay, I have let's say 400 milliseconds to fill before the next bar starts. So what we do, we have a library of cinematic elements, which are short samples, which are like suspended cymbal, which does like this kind of a whoosh, right?
Yeah.
So we have a library of those. It's not the large library. It's a couple samples though, but doesn't matter. It's just that we would select this thing and we overlaid it on the top of what we are playing, so that its climax comes on the first bar. Yeah. Right. So there is this kind of a build-up before something happens. So our engine responds to the beginning of, or it just gives you the feeling that something is happening, something is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And okay, and the climax comes on the first bar, which is musically correct, and then two things happen. First thing, of course, we start playing the destination action music for sure, and we fade out whatever we were playing before, and the suspended symbol actually acts in two ways. First, it tells you that something is happening, and second, it masks the fade out of the original song.
Yeah.
Which is actually this is as Adam said, what's valid for film is valid for our soundtrack. I may slightly enlarge this because that was another rule we have made for ourselves. Because what he said wasn't the rule; it was just a conclusion of the rule before. It was like what we want to do, what we want to create for this game is a kind of a film-like soundtrack. And if I'm saying it, I don't mean only in a matter of cinematics. I mean the cutscenes, these parts of where the story is being told, but also in the gameplay music. And I mean, sort of like the exploration, or when you're in combat, where you are collecting herbs or whatever, you're sleeping or whatever. Even there, we wanted to achieve kind of a cinematic experience with the music. Why? Because we think the story is so strong, and everything in the game is actually so well done according to us that it may as well be a wonderful, fantastic Hollywood blockbuster had it not been game. But it's a game, so it doesn't matter that it's a game to us. I mean, we are obliged we have to create a music which would fit even to a film. So that was why we started thinking this way. That's why we created these seamless transitions. That's why we were indexing every single bar, annotating, so we know where to start the next music, so it sounds natural, flowing, as if it was composed that way, as if it was composed for film. That was the reason. It cost us many additional troubles to solve, many. It was hundreds, maybe thousands of hours extra work, where we always feel like, well, this game deserves it, So just to explain why we have made it so difficult and complicated way. And there is one thing I would like to say. We did this system of seamless transitions, which is in a project, or I can sketch it in 5 minutes to anyone and explain how it works. And it's the concept is easy, but to make it finally, to produce it and to make it happening, it was extremely difficult. Anyway, when we had some kind of, it was an early version of game. I don't know, it was maybe alpha, maybe beta, probably beta. In alpha, there wasn't any. There was just there were just 2 tracks or something, and they were just switching in one after another. But in beta, we already had some music which was connected this seamless way, and guys from PR asked us to create a short video footage directly from the game, so we also have, the narrator would say, in Kingdom Come Deliverance, we also have a very cool and never seen before system of seamless transitions in between the musical tracks. See for yourself, and then that would be the example, So Adam was like, okay, so and so he made a footage of 10 seconds Henry walking on a field, and 10 seconds Henry entering the village, and the music changed, of course abruptly, because seamlessly, that's it. And we gave it to guys from PR, and they were like, okay, sorry, but what's this? And he was like, well, that's the footage you wanted. And they were, sorry, but we wanted to see we want to see, what is the change? We don't hear, where is it? And he was like, that's it. It worked.
That's awesome. So yeah, with all this dynamic music, so I've been listening to the soundtrack on Spotify as well. So if you've got all the dynamic music, how did you go about putting it together into like a linear album?
You need to linearize it. That's exactly how you say that. It's exactly how we call it actually. So basically you choose one way. It's like interpretation, right? So you have multiple ways how you can play, quote unquote, this particular song or this particular track. And so you just choose one way and you just render it, just fix it in somehow. Okay. So that's what we did, and with a number of these things, yeah.
I don't know. I think from my side, these things I was doing, of course, it wasn't completely easy, mainly due to decision. I mean, because what we are preparing now and what we will release in some near future is kind of a complete soundtrack. Because what this is the soundtrack which is available on Spotify, on Steam and iTunes and everywhere, is the essentials, which is like a selection of some cutscenes, some demo, some intro music. I mean, music which plays under the main menu, and just a bit of the in-game music, but definitely not all of it, because this soundtrack is 50 minutes and we have more than 5 hours of music. Yeah. So what we want to, 6 hours. Yeah, actually 6 hours. The thing is, we have 6 hours because just 1 hour we spent on these transitions. Those were tiny.
Sorry, we have no, we have 8 hours.
8 hours.
Something is like that's when you take all the assets from our game and just slap them into a one huge playlist. It runs for like 8 hours.
Wow. We should definitely ask for more money then. I didn't know that. Anyway, and I'm just joking. But the thing is that as we have this system of seamless transitions we are talking all about on and on, it means like it enables you to one track to another every 10 seconds. And anywhere in the game, anywhere you are, within 10 seconds, you can seamlessly go through another music. This goes for the exploration and some other functionalities, not for combat or something. But so in order to show all these transitions which we have actually it's like handcrafted done. It was handmade. There was no automatization for that, because each of those transitional pieces has to be composed properly for that particular piece, place in the score. It had to be produced, it had to be tested, it had to be implemented, and before, of course, mastered. So it was a lot of work. And there is about 1,000 of them, I think, maybe more, I don't know. But around 1,000 pieces. And if we would, and some of them are actually quite nice, these transitions are interesting, they bring transitions also in a harmony way, coming from one key to another, or they offer different ending of a phrase or whatever. Very often happens this. So if we would want to create a really full soundtrack, we would have to come up with all the versions, which is impossible because there would be, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of hours. Yeah. So the funny, or maybe the sad thing about our work, maybe funny and sad in both, is that we have done so much work, and nobody in the world will hear every single bar we have composed for the game, because there are so many ways, so many possibilities, so many options which way it's being played back,
And then there's the Easter egg.
Oh yeah, there is.
Yes, there's an Easter egg in the monastery music.
I'm not sure if we should say it.
No. Let's just no spoilers. No spoilers.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have to go find it.
Yeah. Maybe small hint. Go for the lyrics.
Yeah, go for the lyrics. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, it's I would say it's one of the trickier to find, but you can find it. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. Right. I've got one last question then. So, this is partly for me and partly for any other sort of composers just starting out listening. But if you had one tip for your younger self, or a composer just starting out and trying to get into the games industry, what would you tell them?
Can I start?
Yes.
I wanted to say don't buy drugs, but somebody else said it before. So yeah, you go ahead. No problem.
Yes. Kids don't do drugs. No.
Yeah. Okay. It's true.
Actually, yes. Actually, it is a good idea not to do drugs. I guess. But that's not the advice. I would say that it's really important to have a use for your music when you start out, right from the very beginning. So basically, spend as little time on making music, which is for always try to have use for your music.
Yeah.
So always try to
just have writing for writing's sake.
Yes, exactly. So always have a clear vision what the music is supposed to be. ideally start out with joining a project and write music for that project, right? Because it makes your life easier, because all sorts of things are decided on your behalf. That was my experience, and that just accelerates you greatly, right? And that's one thing. The other thing is start like I would train by mimicking reference videos and reference music. So basically have let's say a palette of songs, of tracks of whichever genre, and try learning how to emulate those and go from there. So these two advices, and start with this as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think what Adam says, at least the first one, then I'll definitely go for that one too, because what he said, many things are decided by somebody else than you, and you start to learn that actually you are working in a team, which is very important as well, and you need to think about the rest of the team as often as possible, because if you make something easy for yourself, you will most probably make it complicated for somebody else. So this is one thing. The other thing is also, if you do things just for yourself, to keep it in some, I don't know, in some drawer or whatever, you'll probably never finish anything at all. That's the typical common mistake, common error. I was the same. I started composing some pieces just for nothing when I was much younger, and what I wanted to. I don't know what I wanted. I mean, I wanted the Academy Award always, but at start I wanted what Adam actually said. I wanted to have some use for my own music. Luckily, because as I've said, I started with all the transcriptions and arrangements, and I also was a member of this musical family in Prague. Amongst the other musicians. I got the use for my music, for my work very, very early. So that was my advantage. But other than that, when I tried to start compose something on my own, and I wanted to finish it one day, it's like, because nobody's pushing you. There is no deadline. There is nothing. You may just as well make it better and better. First 8 bars, then first 10 bars. You are listening what you already have on, and you are like, that's nice. Yes, what next? And you work sort of with a speed 3 or 4 measures a day, which is something I don't know. I've heard some Ernest Hemingway, I think, was writing books this way. But honestly, this is not the way how you can compose, say, 5 or 6, or Adam said 8 hours of soundtrack for a video game. So you should start with something which really is pushing you a bit to do things on time. This is very important, I would say.
Actually, yes. You know what? It is more than 6 hours. The 8 hours contains also some transitional silences in there. So it's really kind of a technical content, not the actual. Yeah. Just to clarify.
And maybe one more answer, or one more tip from me. Yeah. What I would say to myself, well, I don't know. There is the individual way for each of the musician, and it's depending on so many things. So I can only say what helped me a lot was watching the scores of those they do it the good way. For instance, John Williams is having fantastic scores, and you can learn just by reading them. And particularly reading and listening to the music in the film, and then without the film, just the soundtrack. But the same goes for, I don't know, Antonín Dvořák or Brahms or these classical composers, Mozart. Actually any score you can find on the internet or anywhere else, and there are now a bunch of them. It's free, everybody can get it. That's a big school, big lessons. You can just find many things how to write it. So this is great. And the last thing I would say is, you definitely do need to have some showcase, and it has to be excellent. It has to be the best you have. First, you need to really invest, even if necessary, even some money, but definitely a lot of time into it. And it needs to be a bit original. It shouldn't be the same everybody else is doing. Go a bit against the current, Just I don't know if everybody is doing this sound design. Can I say sound design shit nowadays? Which I'm sorry to say. If you need to, you can cut it out. But I mean, if it's like this is the style nowadays, like just no melodies, simply just shapeless 3 chords.
Stuff, yeah.
Yes, again, on and on and on in a very long strings, and then 4 notes in piano within 2 minutes. Okay, well, it may work as well for the film, but this is not of your concern, because it doesn't work for your career. It works for the people. They already got the job, right? You need to get the job, and you will probably not get it when you do the same they did. You need to come up with something different. You need to show that you are capable of doing things. You need to show that you are capable of doing something original, something people will remember. People will enjoy at the first hearing, and they want to hear it again. This is maybe the good thing. And I will finish with what it's not my idea. It's what I think Woody Allen said it, but he said it much more clever, and then I will say it now. But he said something like, "Stop thinking and preparing for creating your first fantastic debut movie, and just go and make it. Do it. So just don't wait too much. Don't spend that much time on preparation and countless hours of thinking how I will compose it when I will start composing one day. Do start composing. Just write the music. Yeah, that's it."
Well, that was brilliant advice.
Well, I don't know. It helped to me, definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. That's an hour gone already.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. No, really. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, then. I'm talking too much, always.
All right.
Okay.
So,
I really appreciate it.
So thanks for having us very, very much.
Thank you very much, Will. Thanks for brilliant questions, Will. Really.
Right.
I appreciate it. I mean it. Really.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's obvious that you're a musician too, because you are asking the things I would like to answer, Yeah, maybe one day we'll repay this to you. Yeah. So fingers crossed to your own job, and all the best. Thank you very much.
And that is episode 13 done. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some value out of it and found it as interesting as I did. If you want to get in touch, you can find me on Twitter at WillHellywell1, so that's the number 1. And I've just launched a Patreon page for the podcast, so if you want to support the podcast and have input on new episodes, then go and support me on Patreon. It's patreon.com/WillHellywell. Thanks very much.